The pictures were hanging upside down, I said. They bounded to her feet. My friend gasped and smiled. Mary, you are a born storyteller. I actually felt goosebumps. I put my can of Pepsi down without taking a drink. No, Cindy, I'm not making this up. I came home and there they were, perfectly level, but upside down. Now stop it, you're freaking me out, he said. How do you think I feel? I have to live here. Just as I finished speaking, my grandfather clock struck 7 and began to play Westminster chimes. We jumped, startled by the noisy antique. Sorry, girl, I didn't mean to get you so worked up, I said. I believe the small earthquake we had earlier is to blame. I felt the tremors while eating lunch. Somehow it must have shaken the pictures. Cindy visibly relaxed, as if she had just realized that the monster she had thought she saw wasn't a monster, but a friendly stray dog. Since buying that old grandfather clock a month ago, I have developed a habit of counting the strikes of each hour. It has become such a problem that I can count even while talking. While calming Cindy with my earthquake theory, I counted 6 strikes. I didn't miss one. The 7th strike never came. I guess that's what I get for buying an old clock. We changed the subject to more pleasant topics. However, Cindy had an early day ahead and had to call it a night. She left a few minutes before 8. I began to study the pictures on the wall. I went into the kitchen to do the dishes. The grandfather clock hit 8, and it began to sing again. I stopped doing dishes when its final strikes began. I started counting. I expected 7, thinking it fell back an hour, but my heart began to race when it stopped at 6. 6 again? After drying my hands, I inspected the old beast of a clock. The pendulum swung side to side, and the hands were in the correct position. After diagnosing that these parts were in working order, I reached the end of my expertise. Suddenly, a door slammed behind me. I turned to see my bedroom door closed. Was it open? No. I closed it before Cindy came over. I keep a messing room. So, where did the noise come from? Then, Cindy returned with a drink and a wrapper from her dinner slice of cake. I noticed a piece of insulation lying in the middle of the living room. I looked up and saw the attic door cracked open. The rope for opening the attic door swung like the door had been recently pushed back up into the ceiling. I grabbed the rope and pulled. The door easily opened. A folded ladder was mounted to the back of the door. I unfolded it. The ladder reached the floor and I climbed up. I turned the flashlight on from my cell phone and searched the attic. Insulation evenly covered the attic floor. It wasn't the kind of attic meant for storage or an extra room. However, I could see foot-sized disturbances in the insulation along the trusses. Someone had been walking up here. My mouth went dry. I couldn't explain this away with an earthquake. I quickly descended the ladder, trying to shake off the fear that was about to overcome me. There had to be an explanation. Perhaps those impressions had been there since the last time it was re-insulated. I folded the ladder and pushed it back into the ceiling. I immediately felt better. Until I saw my bedroom door. It was open. Cindy! I searched the living room. Okay, you got me. The game's over. I needed her to come out of my room or the kitchen, from anywhere, but she didn't. I cautiously walked to my room, holding my phone like a billy club. I turned on the lights. The pictures were hanging upside down again. I distinctly remember setting them right before Cindy came over. The grandfather clock struck the 3/4 hour, sending a chill throughout my body. I felt a presence like someone was standing behind me. I spun around, but nobody was there. The ticking of the clock echoed throughout the house. It grew louder, or at least my near-panicked mind thought it grew louder. At expression and design, I approached the tall clock carefully, expecting it to attack me or explode. However, it did neither, and instead behaved like a normal grandfather clock. This bothered me more than the unusual noises. Everything could be explained if it was broken, but if it was working, then what was happening? I searched the entire house, not that it took long. Bedroom, bathroom, living room, and kitchen. I wanted a tiny house to feel more cozy and less cluttered, which is not how I would describe my current state. The clock struck 9. I held my breath. The tune played out, and the count began. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It stopped at 6 again, 3 times. 6, 6, 6. The strange to me by this was the time difference between the two counts. That was it. I grabbed my keys and raced out the door. I drove to Cindy's and stayed the night. The following day, I Googled clock repairman to see if they still existed. To my surprise, I found one over an hour away, but he advertised that he was willing to travel. So I called and asked if he could fix my old clock. He said he could fix any clock, and we agreed to meet at my house after lunch. He pulled into my drive with a magnet on the side of his white cargo van advertising his company, Fix the Ticks. He unloaded a toolbox and asked where the grandfather clock was. I showed him and then asked if he'd like some coffee. He did. I scooped the ground coffee into the hopper. Something was bothering me. I poured the water in and tried to figure out why I felt so anxious. I turned the coffee pot on. Then it hit me. I never told the repair guy I had a grandfather clock. I stood staring at the coffee beginning to percolate. I heard his footsteps behind me. I felt his breath on my hair. I knew he had a hammer in his hand. I don't know how I knew, but I did. There was no need to turn around. There was nothing I could do. My clock had run out.
Finally, the day has arrived, Andrew smugly mused. No, it isn't his birthday. Or perhaps by a contorted logic one can say that it is. After all, wasn't this day destined to usher in a new phase in Andrew's life? This day will bestow a new lease of life to him, hence, one is justified in calling it his birthday. The beeping of his phone pulled him out of his reverie. It was a message from Ajay, his office colleague. It read, "Congratulations. I want a grand party. No excuses shall be entertained. And don't forget your hapless friend once you fly off to America." Andrew smiled indulgently. Evidently, Ajay adored him. In fact, almost all of his colleagues admired and adored him. Andrew's charismatic personality, coupled with his good looks and pleasant disposition, won him a great many friends and admirers. However, this deluge of admiration had deluded him into thinking that the world revolved around him. But in this case, it wasn't presumptuous of him to think that, since last few days, he had become the hot topic of discussion amongst his colleagues. So, his last few days, his office was abuzz with news of him, and he had actually become the sole topic of discussion. Rumors had it that the managerial board has decided to promote him and offer him a position at their San Francisco branch. There were several other perks, such as a furnished, luxury accommodation, subsidized transportation, free gym membership, etc. His performance had been excellent in the last fiscal year, and he had been expecting an appraisal, but this was beyond his wildest imaginations. He had always been attracted to the American dream, but being a mediocre student, he had accepted the harsh truth that this dream would forever remain unfulfilled. Now all my dreams will be fulfilled, for Lady Luck has finally smiled upon me, Andrew gloated as he chewed on his breakfast. Today, his manager will officially declare his promotion and offer him the transfer letter to USA. He has already prepared the speech which he will deliver after the official announcement. He has meticulously planned each and every moment of the day. He wants the day to be perfect and will ensure that nothing goes awry. He put on his best suit, wore his most charming smile, and set out for the office. "It will be the best day of my life," he smirked. He got stuck in traffic. Had it been any other day, his mood would have soured. But today, no adversity seemed strong enough to dampen his euphoria. However, the traffic jam delayed his arrival in the conference room until 9, thereby compelling him to rush through the office lobby to mark his attendance. As he was rushing, he collided with a colleague, which made him almost topple, though he regained his balance in the nick of time. "Harry Hiddegreb," said Lightfell, looking up from his map and his workbench. But his colleague was not as lucky as him, as she couldn't save herself from the impact of the collision and lay supine on the floor. Her satchel flew open, scattering all its contents on the lobby floor. Andrew felt sorry for her and extended his hand to help her up, but as he saw her face, he instantly drew back his hand. It was Shalami, his most despised colleague. Though there was no concrete reason for Andrew to despise Shalami, yet he could not help hating her. Perhaps it was Andrew's bloated ego that could not accept Shalini's indifference towards him. She was the only person in his office who didn't pander to his pompous self-esteem and made no effort at being his friend. However, Shalini wasn't indifferent particularly to Andrew. It was her reclusive nature which made her indifferent to people in general. She had no friends in office and wasn't at all bothered by it. She was happy to lead a solitary existence. "Next time onwards, try to make more effective use of your eyes," Andrew growled, and left her lying on the floor with her files and papers scattered all around. Kolda started to speak, but suddenly sat upright, almost knocking over his chair. As he fiddled with the paperweight on his desk, he found himself pondering over the mishap in the lobby. Andrew was incensed at this imperfect beginning of his perfect day, more so because it was with Shalini that he collided. However, the thought of Shalini not only riled him up, but also made him anxious. Just as she ruined the beginning, she also posed a threat of devastating his entire perfect day. This was not merely an unfounded anxiety of Andrew. It in fact had solid foundation of truth in it. Andrew's promotion and his realization of the American dream was not as smooth a ride as he himself and his colleagues made it out to be. There is a vexatious clause to this seemingly perfect proposition, which his colleagues ignored, and he entirely dismissed. The news of this anticipated promotion had more to it which Andrew deliberately ignored. It was only the partial new that he chose to believe. Yet his willful ignorance didn't change the fact that the managerial board had decided upon 2 candidates who were being considered for the promotion. One was obviously Andrew, and the other was correct. Just about everything in the National Environmental Sciences Service that Shalini stood no chance of being preferred to Andrew. Shalini was a recluse and hardly made any effort to please the boss, while Andrew made all-out effort to charm the boss and was apparently a favored employee amongst the managerial board. Though all the odds were in Andrew's favor, Yet it didn't eliminate Shalini from the race. She had minuscule chances of winning the race, but the fact that she was in the race made Andrew anxious. An increment of his anxiety was directly proportional to the progression of the day. He hadn't heard anything from the boss yet, and the same was true for Shalini as well. And as they say, no news is good news. The silence of his boss had somewhat soothed his frayed nerves. After the lunch break, Andrew received a call from the boss, asking him to come to his cabin immediately. Andrew surreptitiously eyed Shalini to check whether she was also going to the boss's cabin. As he saw her immersed in her work, he was ensured that she had not received any call from the boss. Thus, heaving a sigh of relief, he made his way to the boss's cabin. As he walked out of the cabin, he found the attention of all his colleagues riveted upon him, their eyes lit with anticipation. Before he could utter a word, AJ rushed and embraced him. He wanted to outdo everyone else in congratulating Andrew, but he met with an unexpected response. Andrew pushed him away and started laughing maniacally before he crumbled onto the floor bawling. Everyone was perturbed by his sudden maniac behavior, but no one could muster the courage to approach him. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally cooled down and regained his composure. His eyes were bloodshot, and he shot a glance of pure hatred towards Shalini, who was still immersed in her work, unperturbed by the drama unfolding around her. He shouted menacingly, "Congratulations, witch. You have succeeded in snatching away my dreams with your black magic." Without taking her eyes off her computer screen, Shalini calmly replied, "I think you have forgotten that along with you I was also being considered for promotion. It isn't gracious of you to blame me if the managerial board has chosen me over you, is it?" The entire office was dumbstruck to hear that it was Shalini who has been promoted, not Andrew. Andrew retorted with equal composure, "Yeah, it isn't gracious of me to blame you. However, why don't you prove your graciousness by inviting us all for dinner to your home? I suppose with this undeserved promotion you can finally afford to regale us, can't you?" Shalini finally looked away from her computer screen and answered with a sigh, "Yes. Owing to my undeserved promotion, I can finally afford to throw a party. So, I invite you all to dinner at my home tonight, with Andrew as my guest of honor. I expect you all by 8 p.m. Please don't disappoint me." They agreed. Though no one could comprehend the rationale behind Andrew's asking for a party from Shalini, yet everyone was intrigued by the interesting turn of the events. Shalini was an enigma to everyone. Neither did she ever visit anyone's home, nor did she invite anyone to her home. It was only when they saw Andrew's message in the WhatsApp group did comprehension dawned upon them. Andrew had some faint idea that Shalini lived in a dilapidated dwelling in the poor quarter of the city. He provoked her into inviting them to her house because he wanted to make fun of her poor living standards. It was his only way of venting his anger at what he believed was a grossly unjust decision of the managerial board. Thus, he wanted all his colleagues to support him in mocking and insulting Shalini. Though it seemed like a mean and petty idea, yet all of them agreed to oblige Andrew because they, too, believed that Andrew had been wrong. As they reached Shalini's home, they discovered that she indeed lived in a dilapidated and barely furnished apartment. Nevertheless, she made magnificent arrangements to entertain her guests. She had placed a huge stereo on a table with an eclectic collection of music tapes and had asked her guests to select the music of their choice. She had prepared delectable dishes and had abundant supply of snacks and wine to keep her guests occupied and satiate their taste buds. Unexpectedly, the guests found themselves enjoying everything, and she turned out to be a good host. Andrew was infuriated to see everyone praising Shalimi and having a gala time. He felt that his whole purpose of asking for the party was defeated. He felt compelled to salvage the situation and avenge the shattering of his long-cherished dreams, for which he blamed her, and practically calling her a bad partner. Suddenly, Andrew turned off the stereo, forcing the room into a stunned silence. The silence was rent as he jeered. "Cellini, what an inattentive host you are. Have you noticed that the empty wine bottle has not yet been replenished? Or are you being your usual parsimonious self and saving the wine by not serving it to the guests?" His friends taking the cue also joined him in an uproarious demand of wine. Cellini answered composedly, "Despite my earnest efforts, I know I have failed as a host, but I beg all of you to bear with me. As you can see, I have no one to help me around and have to manage everything single-handedly. Yes, I have been inattentive to not replenish the wine bottles earlier, as I was busy laying out the table for dinner. However, I won't keep you all waiting any longer. Andrew, it will be very kind of you if you accompany me to the kitchen and help me carry the wine glasses. Meanwhile, you all enjoy and don't let this minor inconvenience spoil the fun." She threw a beseeching glance at Andrew before leaving the room. Andrew stood undecided for a moment before hesitatingly following her into the kitchen. "Come on, I'll show you." He turned toward the door. She returned after a long time, carrying a tray of glasses filled with red wine. However, Andrew was nowhere to be seen, which made his friends a little uncomfortable. "Where is Andrew?" asked Ajay. "Please, have some wine first. I assure you, this is the finest wine you will ever drink in life, and this time there will be no delay in replenishing once you finish it." Saying this, Cellini forced the glasses into her guests' hands. A few of them took a hesitant sip and immediately spat it out. "What the hell is this?" asked one of them. Chalami flashed a dazzling smile and replied, "I ran out of wine, so I thought Andrew's blood will make an excellent replacement. Thus, I pried open his stomach and filled the glasses. Isn't it the finest red wine the planet has ever had? Please, enjoy your drinks. Blood, flowers, cherries, and wine. Red is the color of life and fine dining, but when anger takes control of the mind, red can make a demon of mankind."